Hi everyone, welcome to the Women in Control live virtual panel. If this is the first time that you're joining us, then welcome. And I do these panels every Friday live at 1 p.m. I think this is the fifth one that I've done now. Today's panel is on essential income streams for artists, and we've got an amazing panel of expertise. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the platform that I started. So Women in Control is a platform that I created around 2 years ago now, and I started it up originally to shine a light and empower women in the industry and myself to kind of give us a platform to shout out about our achievements more and big up our wins, to also inspire any young women that want to work into the industry, and particularly to drive them forward to typically male-dominated roles like management, touring, production, etc., and give them inspirational role models within the industry to look up to. I'm a music manager, and when I started in the industry, there wasn't really anybody that I knew that was doing management. There wasn't really anybody that I could reach out to and talk to. So really trying to create a community and inspire the new generation to kind of get involved and have more of a community basis. So today, as I mentioned, the panel is on the essential income streams for artists, and we've got a great panel selection of experts from the industry, and I'm super excited to have them all here. Our first panelist is Lara Baker, who is from Songtrust, and she is the Director of Business Development there. And Songtrust is the world's largest global royalty collection service. Previously to that, Lara was at AIM, and that's where I got introduced to her. And she went on to then start her own consultancy for clients such as BBC Introducing Live and Great Escape. And Lara's a massive advocate for women in the industry. She was a founding committee member at the Music Week in Women in Music Awards, and she's been a great supporter of me throughout my journey as well, so super excited to have her here. And second panelists are the Nova twins, and unfortunately we've had to separate them because they are on lockdown, so they're joining us from separate locations, but they're both on here. And they are made up of Amy and Georgia, and they're a rock duo, and like I said, they're going to give us an artist perspective. And they had a lot of success, especially in the last year or so, with funding. They received the International Showcase Fund and the Prs Momentum Fund, so looking forward to getting their insight on that. And also with branding deals, they were recently the face of the Dr. Martens campaign. And our final panelist is Sammy Andrews, from who's the CEO of Deviate Digital. And Sammy is a legend in the game and a leading digital advisor in the industry. And through Deviate Digital, she works on artist and project campaigns, delivering streaming strategies, data insights, creative digital marketing, content creation, and obviously in the current climate as well, everyone's looking to the world of digital, so we can't wait to hear your expertise. I'd first of all love to hand over to each of the panelists. If you could introduce yourselves and let us know a bit about who you are and what you do, and everyone can put a face to the name. And Lara, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, thank you. And that was a lovely intro, and it's so nice to be on a panel with so many of my favorites. I wish we were doing this in person, but hey ho, one day. Yeah, so I mean, the way you introduced me was perfect and very kind. I work for Songtrust, and we are the world's largest global royalty collection service and publishing administrator. Yeah, prior to that, I was at AIM, and I've also done a lot of consulting. So I've worked on the Great Escape Festival, the International Live Music Conference, BBC Music Introducing Live, lots of different things. But I think the common thread between all of it has always been very much about helping independent artists to have the tools and the knowledge that they need to make a living from their creativity. And that's what we do at Songtrust, and I'm sure I'll explain a bit more about publishing and how to collect publishing royalties as we progress. But yeah, also really passionate about diversity and women in music, and it's great to see some incredible women speaking on this session.
Hello, thank you also for that lovely introduction. Yeah, so I'm Sammy Andrews, current CEO of Deviate Digital, and you kind of explained all the things that we do there, but we work across a lot of sectors, from labels, artists, publishers, brands, merchandise companies, and until very recently, a very large promoter, running things like paid digital spend and social strategy. But before that, I mean, I've done loads of jobs. I'm also an artist manager, been head of digital at a lot of record labels, but I started off firstly in really awful punk bands, actually, playing guitar, but then studied sound production and also run events. So I've done a few different things in the industry, but yeah, my last week has predominantly been the phone going, hi, so this digital thing? So yeah, that's kind of where we're at the moment, but I'm happy to talk through some of that today. And thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just getting to touch with the unmute button. Yeah, no, we're Nova Twins. I'm Amy, vocals and guitar, and we've just been coming at it from a band's perspective since forever. That's all I can remember, and I guess we've just been positioning ourselves as, well, in the music industry, but as women in music, as an independent band. So I guess we'll have a different perspective on things. So yeah.
So I wanted to get stuck into, like, how do artists actually make money? For those of you that might not know, I'm a music manager by day, and I've been a music manager for the last 16 years. I started in the industry around 19 years ago, and my first client that I took on for management is Lethal Bizzle, who I still manage to this day. And whether you're a manager or even if you're a self-managed artist, you're going to be wanting to make sure that you're covering all the basic essential income streams. And I think even interestingly, when I was speaking to Lara earlier this week, we were talking about how in these current times with lockdown, it's actually a good time to maybe check if you are actually registered for all the correct streams, what are the basic essential income streams that we need to have set up. And I wanted to hand over to Lara to speak first, obviously from Songtrust perspective on publishing royalties.
Absolutely, yeah, I think everything you've said is really true. And I think a lot of artists and writers, they're maybe really focused on live and on merch and on getting distribution and getting their royalties from, you know, their distributor and stuff. And publishing often slips quite far down the list, I think, just because it's such a complicated area of the business to understand. And I totally get that. But what that means is that so many writers are leaving money on the table that's actually rightfully theirs, and that their music has already generated, their songs have already generated, and they just don't realize really that they're not collecting. So what Songtrust's mission is really to make a more equitable music ecosystem whereby, you know, songwriters of any level, whether they're really early stage or whether they're, you know, writing huge hits that have millions and millions of streams, can collect their publishing royalties on a global scale. And I think the biggest sort of misconception as far as this is concerned, and it's something that managers and artists and writers say to me a lot, is, oh, you know, if I'm with my domestic PRO, so that's PRS in the UK, I'm getting everything, aren't I? I'm collecting everything that I'm due. And you know, it's not really the case, because we live in a global market now, and when you look at streaming and you're getting streams all over the world, you know, there's money to be collected from everywhere, and unless you are registered directly with all the different societies, performance and mechanical, around the world, then you're certainly going to be missing out on revenue. So that's what Songtrust does. We register our clients, songwriters who sign up with us, we register their songs globally. We cover 150 countries directly, so that you can be sure that, you know, wherever you have a stream or wherever you're getting plays, that you're collecting those royalties. And making it very simple and very transparent, because I think historically publishing has been, you know, often like check in the post, no explanation, you know, where did those royalties come from? Is it correct? But, you know, we have the technology now to make global publishing administration available to everyone. So yeah, I'm really sort of passionate about educating people around this area, because even people who've been in the business maybe sort of 20 or 30 years will ask me a question, and I'll realize, oh, they don't really understand this area of the business. And that's fine. So give me a shout if you need more information.
I was just going to say, further to that, what Lara's saying is really important. I know this is, you know, about income streams for artists, but one of the biggest income streams to be left on the table is this. Now, we work with huge global superstars, but also new artists who either haven't registered, or quite often someone has incorrectly registered them, and it could be human error. You know, and some of the stuff that's been digitized, if anyone's watching this who has heritage acts, stuff that even has been inputted years and years and years ago may have gone in incorrect in that first time. And there's been quite an industry-wide cleanup project to some degree, but now is a very good time for people to be looking at that, see if they are getting paid out. And that data is not just to be paid, it's also to be discovered. So basically, I always, when I do panels, like metadata is one of the sexiest things that no one talks about in music. It helps you get paid, but also in a digital perspective, if you haven't got the right tags attached to that, it may not surface correctly. You know, if you have to be able to understand either like lyrical value or contextual stuff, like, you know, is the song chill? Is it high energy? Is it, there's a lot of contextual data now as well that needs inputting in order for people to be able to find it, in order for services to be able to put it into the right categories. So, and people just don't think about it. We work with a lot of bands that don't. So there's two elements to that really. One is directly getting paid, and the other is actually making sure that people can surface, you know, this music in the right places.
Yeah, definitely. And I second that as well in terms of like registrations. I speak to so many different artists and they don't know, or they don't register their music and they don't know how to submit it. So I think it's super important that you take the time out to make sure that you do register your tracks. And like Lara said, with companies that do administration, they typically take like a small percentage, and actually you'll find that the money that they'll bring in will be more typically than the percentage that they take. So it's definitely worth it. They can reach out to like a global network and make sure that you're collecting any royalties that could be due. And one thing to consider, it's definitely a good time to like get yourself registered for those now. But with things like publishing, it can take months. Like, well, how many months is it, Lara, for like money to kind of start coming in?
Yeah, I mean, our deals are a 12-month minimum term because a lot of the international money can take 9 months or more to come through. So it is quite a slow game, but you know, now is a great time to really get your house in order and make sure that you're going to be receiving that money. Obviously, there is money that comes sooner through the sort of digital sources, but a lot of the like international performance royalties, they can take 9 months or more.
And I wanted to hand over to the Nova Twins now and touch a little bit on, as an artist perspective, like, and an independent perspective, like what have you found to be like the best income streams for you guys that you've used?
We definitely signed up for PRS. I mean, it goes into our live shows as well, because when we sign up for PRS, when we do live shows, we also track in all the things that we've played. So every venue we've played will be like, we played this set list and that set list, so then they have to pay us for those songs. And I think some bands don't realize that they can claim every little venue, whether it's 50 cap to a festival of 10,000 cap, you can claim these £50, £100, £1,000, but you have to get it in. And some promoters, they'll say, oh, we'll do it for you, but then they don't even bother, and they'll just be like, we've had a long day, and just chuck it in. So just make sure you're writing your own PRS statements.
Yeah, because we're still claiming back from 2017, and you only get like 3 years in some places to claim, and then 2 years in other, depending on what country you're claiming in. And it works differently again, whether it's, for us, we gig a lot in France, so the SACEM has to collect for PRS to collect. And we also had that problem where we had confusion with some of our registrations. So not all of our things were linked up. We had many different like numbers, and it was all a bit confused. So we're still actually just about organized our song. So it is important that even as artists, we're aware of that, but you do sometimes need a bit of help. And we get great advice from the people who do know, like people yourselves, like yourselves. And yeah, so it's so important. And as an independent artist, every penny counts. So when the PRS checks come in for our live revenue, we're like, thank God. So yeah, do it.
Yeah, and also you guys have had a lot of success with funding applications. So I wonder if you could give an insight into your perspective of like how that's helped you guys in your careers as independent artists, and any advice that you would give to anybody looking to apply for funding as well.
Yeah, we got granted the Prs Momentum Fund last year. So I definitely recommend applying for that, because that helped us with our PR, our radio plugger, which we just wouldn't be able to afford at that time. And yeah, it was just really helpful kind of just getting the ball rolling with like singles and stuff that we had just about to come out.
Yeah, and we got granted the International Showcase Fund, which helped us get to Eurosonic, which is a really cool European festival where a lot of other promoters can come and check your band out if you're a part of that. It's really great. So yeah, and also you've got other showcase grants, like the International Women's Grant, is it? The Women in Music grant. You've got the Megs grant, which is for touring. Sorry, there's so many, because also we're applying for stuff in isolation as well, which is the help musicians MU, PRS, the COVID grant. There's so many out there that is mind-boggling, but if you can sit down, take the time to do it, it's so helpful, especially in this situation for us, because we just released our debut album and we had to turn back midway on like tour. So everything stopped for us, our whole year stopped. So it's been so helpful to have them organisations just supporting musicians and just live generally. It's been amazing. So yeah, definitely recommend it.
Yeah, definitely. And I've got a blog on my website as well where I've listed a lot of coronavirus advice for businesses, self-employed and freelancers. And there's a section at the bottom for artists as well. So I'll make sure that the ones that you've mentioned are all added in there too. And I'll send that resource out. And what would you say from an artist perspective is like your most key, like biggest income stream, or something that you found like even more surprising that you wouldn't have thought about before being an artist?
Personally, well, live is, we're a live band, so we do like pick up a lot, especially from European festivals. So festival season is really important for a band like us, and the European festivals do tend to pay a little bit more than the UK, which also helps if we have a shortfall here, we can balance it. And again, we're speaking from an independent band's point of view. So we don't have that upright funding like some people might. So everything we make has to be thought about and how we're going to keep the books balanced. So yeah, but also merch, such a key thing for artists, and you can get really creative with it. G, you might want to touch on merch as well.
Yeah, like merch, especially on our own tours, like merch is so important. So we always make sure we have like new things available, new t-shirt designs, and we hand sew bespoke things. So it's a bit more personal and a more fun way to kind of sell merch and kind of get more in touch with the people supporting us. So definitely just try and think more outside of the box ways of kind of keeping merch going, because it's definitely a very important part of our income stream.
And we print on demand as well. I think a lot of artists will think, okay, let me buy this in bulk. And then you have to pay out so much money. You don't necessarily have thousands of pounds to make up 200, 300 worth of t-shirts. Do you know what I mean? So if you can find an organisation that does print on demand, then you're able to make sure your online thing is going without waste. And it's just so much more effective. And then any spare money you do have, you can take that on the road, you know, as opposed to having to separate it for your, because we used to do that, we separated our merch for online and then for touring, but it costs so much. So that way it's a lot easier. And also going back to the kind of hand stitching, recycle your clothes, be inventive. That's what we do. We find old t-shirts and old denim jackets, or we go to vintage shops and find like old stuff, do them up, make them look amazing, and then, you know, we sell them for people to enjoy, because we like obviously making our own stage clothes as well. So you can just be really creative with how you're interacting and selling your merch, and it is so helpful.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point that you mentioned about the print on demand, because when I started the brand with Bizzle, I think it was in 2011, it wasn't really accessible to us at that point, so we did have to go and invest in physical. And like you said, if you want to do a design and you might want to do it in 3 different colorways, and then you've got 2 or 3 designs, you're ended up looking, when you're ordering minimums, at thousands and thousands of pounds investment for stock, where it's difficult to understand what sizes you might sell the most of, what colors popular. So printing on demand is a really great tool that you can use. You could get a designer to create loads of designs for you, put them all up on your website and see which ones work. And I love what you said, Georgia, as well, about creating key designs for special releases. So they're like limited editions and one-offs. And merch, I feel like, was one of my biggest, like, first avenues into like new income streams when I was doing management. Like, before that, we just literally been looking at releasing music, making money from that, making money from advances, collaborations that we were doing. But when we started the clothing brand up, merch just opened up so many doors for us. And also we were able to tie our merch in with our social media. And at the time we weren't really getting a lot of interest from like the mainstream music industry or record labels, and merch and selling our own merch on our own website and directly marketing it to fans from our social media gave us the advantage and the power to kind of get that data collection of our fans and find out where they were, because we were being told that as a grime artist, you're only going to be popular and your audience and fan base is really limited, and it's only going to be in London, Birmingham and Manchester. And you know, there weren't really a lot of companies that were willing to invest in us and work with us. But when we started selling our merch directly and we saw that we were selling it all over the UK, but internationally, Australia, US, all over Europe, that gave us the knowledge of like how wide our fan base was, and we were able to use social media to directly market directly to fans. Sammy, do you want to jump in on this as well?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things I think to tie some of this together. So like both of you mentioned sort of the data side of it. So one thing that I'd say firstly on merch is actually, as an artist or a label or a manager, you have a lot of information about your fan base, whether you have 1,000 fans or whether you have 100,000 fans. If you can be bothered to take the time to look either across all of the different analytics in the back ends of the platform, or have a central hub or some software that looks across that for you, but being able to say, you know, what age, what gender people are. So, you know, if your fan base is 90% female, you're not going to take a load of XXL, like, you know, men's shirts out. So there's a lot of insights you can actually glean from just looking at some of that data. But also then on the flip side, like some of the platforms, so there's so much potential for merch. And I think specific to this situation we're in right now, I think it's quite important to say that merch is actually selling really well. So all of the D2C stores that we're speaking to are seeing a huge surge in merchandise at the moment. But I say that very wary that we're about to enter the biggest recession that the world's ever seen. So who knows if that'll last or not. But there's stuff you can do, like, you know, setting up stores that feed into Facebook. You can set up a store with Merch Bar on Spotify. Like when we, you know, work with artists, there's quite a lot of things that perhaps they're not feeding into all of the potential storefronts. So it's not, you know, I would always say that the best thing to do is to have your data, and something that we're seeing right now that's an issue for distribution is absolutely rightfully so. Some of the biggest stores have prioritized delivery of essential items, and that's really important, and we have to do that right now. But also it's meant that some of the independent stores are a little bit more nimble and able to work with different delivery partners in order to get some stuff out, you know, into whether that's vinyl. You know, there's a lot of big acts who've got vinyl stuck in warehouses that they will not be able to access for months. And that's a big reason why a lot of releases are moving back, aside from the obvious, you know, that people can't access some of their physical product. But being able to list the stores in places, but also there's, you know, things like affiliate payments. So one of the things that I think artists always miss out on a little bit is, even with some D2C stores, which not a lot of artists look into, they might offer you affiliate payments on top of what you're selling. So if you use a specific link, and things like Amazon have had affiliate schemes for a long time. And like some of the big artists that we work with can make 100 grand at Christmas, because what Amazon does is it doesn't just give you a commission on the product that you sold. If let's say you bring them in, you post something on Facebook, someone clicks that link and they go through to Amazon. If they go and do their entire Christmas shop there, you get a percentage of all those sales because you took them in. So like, you know, when you get a list out what they've bought, but there's a potential for revenue there in a way that a lot of artists don't look at. And a lot of stores offer that. Some of the streaming sites, traditionally download sites, it used to be a way that labels made a lot of extra money without telling artists, is what it used to be. But there's, you know, there's money on the table there. And then, you know, the data. So if you have your own storefront, you can put retargeting pixels in, which I'll talk a little bit more about before the call ends. But it means that if someone comes into your store, you can see, if you place certain things across the customer journey, you can see if someone came into the store but they never made it to the purchase conversion, to the purchase page. So then you can chase them around the internet in a really creepy way until they buy something. But it's quite important to have this in, because what it also means is that you can track people and go, right, they bought this t-shirt, they bought it, they liked it, presumably, but that means they might also like this t-shirt. So you can be quite clever with the data if you know what you're looking at and you have things set up properly. And there's actually a lot more potential revenue streams within all of that than I think people think about. It's not just putting a merch range out and hoping for the best. You can actually dig into the data quite a lot and utilize it.
And I wanted to touch on another aspect as well, which I found like to be like a massive income stream for my artist, is branding deals. And again, this has started to grow over the last few years in terms of the way that brands work with artists. I think, Sammy, you mentioned it before, like artists are definitely becoming more savvy to working with brands.
And I was just saying, I mean, yes is the answer to that. So I mean, even like the Nova Twins are fucking great at it, you know, like, and it's about finding the right partnerships is what we always say to clients. It's, I say this sometimes on panels, but like we get a lot of, you know, rock or indie bands who are like, I don't want a branding deal. And you go, all right, but you drink Jack Daniels, you play through a Marshall amp and you're wearing Converse, but you definitely don't want a branding deal, do you? And it's about finding those authentic branding deals. But there's also a lot of different things, like, you know, a lot of artists, I think, leave money on the table with things like a YouTube partnership program. So there's two elements, like of labels looking after your YouTube channel, or a distributor, if they do, they can monetize the recorded content. But actually, if you're putting up stuff that isn't music, that's there to be monetized in a different way. And a lot of people just aren't monetizing it. And that's money left on the table. Facebook also, it's invite only, I think, at the moment for monetization stuff, but they are running a monetization stuff. There's big channels and conglomerates that are coming together with influencers to be able to monetize. So there's different ways into it. Some of them you can register as a partner. So things like Facebook and YouTube registering as a monetizable partner, but also reaching to brands direct, and things like TikTok and Facebook and Instagram have back-end things where you can match brands to influencers. And a lot of artists often don't see themselves as influencers, which is just mad to me. But and to some degree, I guess it depends how much you want to dance with the devil, you know, in that, you know, whoever might approach you. Like, I won't say who it is, but a lot of our big artists get approached for all kinds of just shit things, if I'm honest. And I've just realized that I'm swearing, and I'm sorry. But it's about finding that legitimate voice, because actually there's a lot of potential for money there. And at the moment, especially, again, taking it back to the situation we're in now, brands have pulled all of their advertising spend. Like the biggest brands you can name in the world are not advertising right now in a way that they were. So that makes it both a good chance to place ads, really, because everyone's attached to their devices and it costs nothing. But also the revenue, the potential revenue stream from ad-funded models will go down. It has to go down because the money's not there to be generated. But I think now is a really good time. This situation isn't going to clear anytime soon, and that's just a reality. Even if it clears in one territory, it's not going to necessarily clear in another. So I think trying to establish who would be a right brand partner for you. You know, if you're an artist or you're a manager looking after an act, you know, is there a collaboration that could be had, or is there some strength also in a unity of collaboration with other artists, is what we like to say to people as well. It's sort of, you know, when you go to these big influencer things, and some of them are great, some of them are awful, you know, and charge a lot of money for stuff that might not work. But teaming up with other artists to create, you know, to grow that network. So maybe it's not a brand endorsement just for one artist. Maybe there's a group of you that becomes slightly more appealing, which is actually what a lot of labels do in different ways, and what influencer agencies do. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and I think you pulled up such a key point as well, which is so relevant, which is not being afraid to do branding campaigns, but choosing authentic branding campaigns. Like with my artists, I've done loads of branding campaigns over the years, but I've only chosen to do ones that are a good fit for the artist. They're authentic, they're credible, and they're going to feel organic and fit in with my artist, like social media profiles. And I might even go out and pitch some of these ideas that I've got to different branding companies, because then I feel like as the manager, I'm going to know what's going to be the best fit for the artist.
And data, again, within that, just to add to the value, I'm all about the data, me. I'm a laugh a second at parties, guys. But the data, if you can see, and we get the flip side, so we get brands that come saying, we want to promote to, you know, 16 to 20-year-old, you know, whatever demographic, but you know your data. So if you do the flip side, if you create a really nice one sheet that goes, this is who my audience are, you know, this is where they are, that's sort of setting you up for brand endorsements, because there will be people that want to utilize that. But again, it's like the dance with the devil thing. I think you have to be so careful about not selling your soul in a way that isn't authentic.
Yeah, branding has been super important for us as well. And I think it's funny, depending on where you are at in your career. Sometimes branding, you know, is great, you know, it can pay for things, but sometimes I think, especially for a band at our level, which is not, obviously we're not massive, but still very much an independent, like.
Oh, but you will be. You will be.
So, but I think when we actually, you know, it's like you said, a dance to the devil. When we put up that we've maybe worked with this brand or that brand, people assume that we've had some big money, like, branding deal and that we're sorted and stuff, but it's not always the case. Sometimes, you know, you work with brands because, like you said, you do believe in that brand, you genuinely wear their product, so it makes sense. Sometimes there is exchange of money, and a little bit of money that can help, and it has helped us in terms of making our videos, but it's more about the long haul in terms of, do you believe in this person? Do you genuinely wear this? Because you see so many like awful things where like some influencers are picking up like slimming pills and things that don't even know what goes into it, and they don't care because they're just going to promote it anyway because it's about the money. But it's not. Sometimes just about really, like you said, the authentic side of that relationship, and like, do you like it? Wicked, why not? And sometimes it is just about exchanging product, which doesn't help with the bank, but you get to wear some nice stuff. So you know, it really just depends on your vibe really, but it has been helpful in terms of even promotion. And you can talk about things where what do artists have to do for free sometimes, and there's that whole conversation there to be had. Exposure.
There's also an argument, obviously, when you're working with brands, and if your starting relationship is just that exchange of services, money involved, but you're building that relationship with that brand, and especially when you're new upcoming artists, like you mentioned, Amy, you can actually get access to maybe their social media, their audience, their fan base, and like look to widen your reach. So I just feel like, break it down. I always look at brand relationships in terms of like a long-term thing. Is it something that I want to continue working with you on? And if they do come to you and they approach you and they're talking about no money being involved, maybe express that and say, obviously, you know, there's no money involved at this time, but I would like to continue building on a long-term relationship, so I'd be happy to accept it on this occasion, but I'd love to continue working with you guys on the premise that we would get, you know, paid in the future. And like Sammy said as well, not to be afraid to understand your power of influence that you have as an artist, and definitely look to be able to monetize that directly to your fan base, because like I said, if you're selling music, we know the streaming numbers, you're not going to be getting a lot from those 0.000 whatever it is that you're going to be getting per stream. So you definitely need to be looking at other avenues, and analyzing your data is just super important. I think as Sammy mentioned, like understanding who you are as an artist, who you are as a brand, and who is actually listening to your music, consuming your content, where are you working, and then find like brand affiliations with that. And did want to touch quickly before we moved on syncs as well, because sync licensing has been another really big income for me and my artists. And again, I've not necessarily signed my artists up to like any big sync companies. That we haven't really been signed to any major publishing companies over the last decade. So that's all been something that we've directly done. I've built relationships up with different agencies and pitched things directly to them, sending them new music that I think could be a good fit with their brand. So I'm constantly sending music out to those different agents. So it's good to kind of nurture and nourish those relationships as well. I am conscious of time, so I did want to get into the current situation and talk a little bit about the impact of coronavirus. Like, as I'm a manager, everything that I had completely got cancelled, all the live shows, branding deals that I had there was like 3 different ones that we were talking about. They were getting to contract stage, they've just completely disappeared, completely vanished. Obviously live shows gone. So I just wanted to go to each of you and ask you, like, how has the situation affected you? I actually know for some people it's brought more work on, and Sammy, I feel you would be good to start us off on that one.
Yeah, so I mean, like I think I said the top of the call, but we're in a very odd situation, and I feel very fortunate and grateful to be in this situation at the moment. But literally it feels like the whole music industry and beyond suddenly wants to know what the hell digital is, and how they can access it. And that's both existing clients who are now going, hi, I'm sat at home, give me things to do. I've never spoke to my clients so much in my life. But also other clients come in, and we've had some massive approaches from record labels. Obviously lost a very big live client, and I mean that's something that that's gone for a while, guys, and that's one of the big issues that's going to impact also the payments we were talking about earlier. They're not going to be there even when we get out of this. It's going to, the long-term view is it's going to impact a lot of payments that we will see next year. So whilst we're feeling it immediately now, it has a bit of a knock-on effect, but we're a lot busier, but also trying to sort of field that and work with people on exactly this stuff, really going, right, doing a digital health check almost, going, right, let me just see what you've got before we even start. And also just trying to say to quite a lot of people, please don't go live all the time. Firstly, most of the platforms aren't licensed. You're not making any money. Some of the stuff that's happening for the big NGOs is incredible. And we've actually been involved with a lot of that as well. But there's a few licensing issues, and there's also, looking at ways that you can actually quality control that. Like, people forget quite often, I think, that unless you want to actually directly interact, you can pre-record some stuff. Like, some of the live streams have been the stuff of nightmares for some managers that I've had calls with, and so the great things for others. But looking at now at how we adapt to this situation, so things that I've already mentioned, like we are heavily placing ads and pushing stuff for recorded music, and whether that's to streams or downloads. We're also working with a lot of clients on merchandise and physical sales, so pushing vinyl, and also a lot of not-for-profit stuff. We're raising a lot of money for different organizations, but you're having to do that at the moment and look across the board at how that looks, not just now, but how it looks later. And I would be cautious for some managers and some artists that are going live every day. There's a value in the scarcity of live. There's a value in that. There's a limited number of tickets. There's only a certain amount that have access to that experience. I would be careful of rinsing your fan base to the extent where they can no longer hear your songs because they've popped up on Instagram at the same time every night for too long, would be my 2 pence worth.
Yeah, definitely. I just feel like, I agree with you. I just feel I've seen so many artists just jumping on Instagram live, and it's just like, I get that everyone's just like want to jump onto digital now in the current situation, but I feel, you have to be more selective about what you're choosing.
And also what you're putting out. That's the thing. I think everyone's gone, just because it's what artists doing. It's incredible. I've seen some amazing live streams. And I've seen some not so amazing ones, but you don't just have to stream your music. And the thing that we do daily calls with TikTok at the moment, and it's working with artists and managers to be able to find ways that isn't necessarily music. It's ways to connect with your fan base. Like, people are, especially on TikTok, are doing, how to make a cocktail or workouts, or like Marshmallow did this thing on how to make a really sick beat out of banging cleaning products. That's not license infringing, but it's great content. And what we're trying to work with people on now really is less about the music, actually, putting strategies in place for that. But in terms of socials, letting people learn how to use socials in an effective way that isn't necessarily going to bugger up a load of licensing issues. So there's two sides to it, but people should be utilizing socials right now, but in the right way.
Yeah, we found the same. Like, we noticed the first week of lockdown, everybody went live. Like, literally our Instagram buttons were never so full. They were so full of live. We just thought it's not fair to everyone who bought a ticket to see us as well. We want to hold something back, so when we do come back out, then people still get to see that show. And I know it's a different experience as well, especially if you're coming at it from a different angle, but I think we're coming at it from the point of view where we just want to have fun with our audience. So we're doing loads of challenges.
Talk about some of them. These girls are smashing content on the socials right now. Talk the riff stuff and the makeup.
Yeah, we just want to have something for people to do in isolation because we're bored ourselves. So we just thought, okay, let's set up a series of challenges. So we did like a makeup challenge. We did, obviously we like makeup. We did a guitar riff and bass riff challenge, and they could play any instrument they want, but it was from the album, but it was just a fun thing for people to do. And then now we're doing an art challenge. I don't know, G, if you want to touch on the art as well. So
yeah, just a way of getting people again to just draw and be creative, because I do feel it, artists are literally thinking they're going to lose their fan bases because they're not out on the road. So I think people are panicking and thinking we got to do a live stream, otherwise they'll forget, and they'll move on to someone else. But I think it's definitely best, as you said, Sammy, to just kind of take a breath and not feel like you have to hit it every day, because it's kind of like less is more, and you want to you don't want to force feed them too much. So yeah, we just do challenges as a way that people don't have to be like fed our music all the time. It's just kind of their creativity on it rather than us just kind of blasting it all the time.
You are a sparkling example of an artist doing it right, ladies, both of you.
Yeah, you are. You guys have been amazing.
And and also you get to know who your fans really are as well. You really get to see, because there's people who popped up on our feed who we just never, you would never know of, but then they're expressing themselves, and it's just a nice exchange as well. It's not always to sell. It's not always to sell. It's just a mutual exchange of creativity, and that's what we need at the moment. That's what art's there for as well. And I think we forget about that sometimes. So in isolation, it's super important.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think it's so important that we keep creative and like think outside the box in these times. And Lara, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I mean, not so much on the creative side, because obviously what we do in publishing is the admin side. But I mean, much like Sammy, the phone has been ringing a lot really recently, because a lot of the managers and the writers who I've previously spoken to but have been really busy focusing on tours or brand partnerships or all these other things are suddenly thinking, okay, right, I need to get my house in order. I want to get things registered correctly. I want to get this publishing money flowing through. And so, we're really aware that we have a really important job to do at Songtrust to make sure that, we're getting that really important income through to writers at what is a really challenging time, albeit it takes quite a long time for publishing royalties to come through. I guess one of the things in publishing is that obviously with all the nightclubs and venues and festivals and bars and restaurants being closed, there is going to be an impact down the line where there's not as many performance royalties for those writers. And like Sammy said, that hit will be felt in a few quarters' time rather than immediately. But streaming revenue is good. Streaming royalties are coming through. So if you're registered correctly, then there's an important income stream, and a lot of people are focusing on it at the moment for sure.
And just to add to the streaming thing, so whilst it's annoying doing a lot of stuff, I would say that there's a huge emergence right now of monetized streaming platforms, which they've always existed. The music industry's just never paid any bloody attention before. But there's a lot of places now that you can actually, if you want to monetize, you can do that behind a paywall. And I'm aware of a lot of artists starting to experiment with that, and I think we'll see more of that. And I actually think that's one of the things that may carry after this, like not at the rate that it is now. It's insane now, and it's what Amy said, everyone's like panicking and doing stuff. But this, I would hope that a lot of people would see some of the situations and some of the new streams that have been looked at now could be carried forward for when this is all over and become incremental streams on top of what they already had. Like a lot of people are pivoting. There's no one size fits all answer at the moment, but there's artists like Frank Turner's raised tens of thousands of pounds for independent venues, doing a load of stream stuff. He's raised a lot for his crew, and we're seeing some people get quite inventive with the monetized side, whether that's donations or behind a paywall. And I would encourage managers, if you have a fan base, to look at that, but also to look at if you have old content that you can monetize, because it doesn't have to be now. It doesn't have to be you in your bedroom. It could be a really fucking great gig that you filmed years ago that you could now put out. Maybe people haven't seen it. So like have a look at what content you have and see if that can be monetized.
No, that's great. I think, you ladies have all touched on such amazing advice and so many different ways that we can look to kind of monetize what we're doing now. And I think one thing we should take from this is to be more creative. I think it is pushing us, like you said, Sammy, all this technology was already available to us, but we weren't necessarily using it. But I don't think we should just all try and jump onto everything at once. We should definitely try and be creative and find angles to fit onto it and work out what works for you and your audience and your fan base. I wanted to quickly go to some questions because I know we've only got like 10 minutes of the session left, and I know we've got quite a few questions that have come in. So let's get started. So the first one is from Phil Birch, and it's to Sammy and Lara. You've both been so outspoken on the importance of metadata in ensuring artists are getting paid. What's the best practical step that artists who have an existing catalogue can take to review what their distributors have submitted and to fix any issues?
Lara, do you want to start with that one? Just as a heads up, the message I sent was because my neighbours have just decided that now's the time to start hoovering really loud.
Amazing. Well, I mean, it might be more relevant for you, Sammy, because we obviously, the distribution side of the business is not what we're in. We're on the publishing side. But I mean, the best practical step is, first of all, on the publishing side, everyone who co-writes needs to have their splits confirmed. And that's the very most fundamental piece of data involved, because if you're writing with other people and you don't agree what shares you've got, you can't then go forth and register and collect everything that you're due as songwriters. And, you know, if the shares don't add up to 100%, then no one's going to get paid. So I think that's a really sort of practical, fundamental thing to have in order.
And so I'm going to try, I think they've stopped hoovering. Going directly both to labels and publishers as well, but labels and distributors, just to see what the hell was uploaded in the first place, because you'd be amazed at one slip of a finger. We worked with a couple of big acts who discovered that they haven't been paid for #1 song because no one noticed. You know, it's so going back through that process and seeing what is there. And again, now's probably a good time for that sort of level of housekeeping, just to check that everything is there and you know, speak directly to the parties involved. Also, like, we've had a few artists realize that they're actually out of license with a lot of things, which they hadn't realized. So, you know, again, it depends where you're at in your career, but I would just say, in terms of taking stock, reach out to all the correct parties and ask them. And also, if you're an artist directly, have a look through some of your statements, because this is what people I don't think do often enough. Like, look through your statements. Is there something really obvious missing? You know, it's worth casting an eye over what you're actually being paid for to check that there isn't obviously something missing, and then figuring out where that problem is and addressing it. But the splits that Lara said are really important. Like, those need to be established at the start and submitted correctly.
Great, and I've got a question from Jackie. I think Nova Twins, you might be best to answer this. Is there anywhere that I could get some support with funding applications, as it can be overwhelming and super competitive? Now, did you guys do the applications yourself, or did somebody else do them on your behalf?
So it's definitely a mixture. There was the isolation ones for the personal grants we did ourselves. PRS was actually help via a friend, and also there are people out there whose jobs are to apply for grants, so you can, maybe we can hook you up at the end of it, I don't know, but like someone you can discuss with someone. The best thing that we've always had is advice from people. We always ask people, how is this done? Or ask the right person. I know that's easier said than done, but if you've got anybody like Sammy, Lara, yourself, Nadia, or even like for us, we've got, now we have management, but before that, it was just an asking game. How do we do this? And looking up ourselves and just registering and then picking up the phone. You can call PRS. You can call these people and ask what's happening. You can get advice, you know. You can call the MU even, and someone can help you. Definitely, actually, call the MU, because they're quite good actually as well. So just pick up the phone and ask. Don't be afraid to get help. Yeah, you do have to sign up to these organisations. So whilst I'm saying ring, MU stands for Musicians Union, if you didn't know, to that person, because I know everybody knows the, you know, and basically it's £1 to join, you know, things like that. You can find them at the right time. So definitely join like organisations that can help. There's loads of them. There's more.
Also from Musicians Union, they can help you with like lawyers. They can be your lawyer on other stuff. They also give so much more. Even earplugs, you can get like a massive % off just through Musicians Union. So it's definitely a good one to join. And like I myself, I've done a few of my applications, and I'm not the best at like signing in stuff, but they make it really easy, these COVID-19 forms. So it's very for everyone. It's not like a really kind of nitty-gritty application. So I would try as well doing your own ones, because if I can do it, I'm sure you can.
Just to add to what you said about the MU as well, I think at this time when the industry is really struggling with all the COVID-19 issues, all the trade bodies are so helpful right now. So, you know, if you're a manager, connect with MMF, and obviously AIM do a lot as well. And, you know, there are a lot of trade organizations, and you really can see the value in times like this of those organizations and the funds that they create and the advice that they can give and all of that. So seek out the relevant industry bodies for whatever it is that you do.
Great. And then Sabrina's just asked a question, which is quite similar, about how she can find out more about the grants and funding. So I mentioned in the middle of the panel, but on my blog, there's a coronavirus advice section, and I will list all the grants and funding that the girls have mentioned in the panel on there as well, with some links. I've got an anonymous question, which I think would be good for you, Sammy. How do you begin analyzing your data?
Well, honestly, it depends what it is. So you begin by having a look at it, and again, it depends what it is and where. So I mean, there's just some like tips and stuff. If you only look in one place, you're not going to have a true view. And it annoys me sometimes when we get clients like, you know, this is my biggest territory because I've seen it on Spotify, and go, all right, but what does your data look like on non-Spotify platforms, like, you know, Apple, Deezer, Amazon, anything else? Like, you have to be able to really, it's a global world. You need to have a global view. But also flip side, when, you know, people are like, I'm massive in Russia, massive. And then actually when you weight it by population, you're not at all. So I think there's little bits that you need to understand to be able to read the data. But there's a lot of great resource online. Like, if you can spend a bit of time researching, there's also, you know, various bits of software available that can pull in multiple sources. Now, the stuff that I generally look at is both your streaming and sales data, because that gives you a bit of an idea, but also socials data, and try and, you know, mix those two things together so you can actually get a true view. Now, even on your socials data, like, you know, in Russia, it's VK, it's not Facebook. There's different platforms in different places thriving, so you can't really have a full idea of what your fan base looks like and be able to analyze that data without looking at it. And also, just something that we didn't really get into, but things like pixels and retargeting. Anyone watching that doesn't know what those words are, Google them. Please Google them. You will thank me later. But you can also wrap smart links so that wherever you're using that, you can gain extra data from that by dropping things on people and, again, chasing them around the internet. But there's so many data sources, but I would start with your sales data and your socials data. Try and figure out who your fan base is, if there's a really clear patterns there, whether your plays are coming from playlists, library, you know, where are those plays coming from? You can identify quite a lot. And skip rates, that's the other thing. You know, if you're releasing a single as an independent artist and no buggers listening to it, you might want to have a think about something else, but skip rates are quite a good thing to look at as well.
Great. And I've got a question here for you, Lara, as well. It's from anonymous attendee. If you work with Songtrust, do you no longer need to work with or register your songs with PPL, PRS, MCPS, etc.? And also from Vanessa, is it important for artists to register for MCPS at the start of their release, or if not, when is best? So I thought I'd tag those.
I've got like 30 seconds to cover the entire of the publishing business. So first of all, PPL, that's on the master side, not on the rights that you have as a songwriter side. So that's a different topic. I can't remember what the rest of the question was. Oh yeah, if you work with Songtrust, you still want to be a PRS member or a member of a equivalent around the world, depending on where you are. You'll still get your writer share of royalties directly from them. But then when you use Songtrust, you no longer need to add your songs to their platform. You just add them once on Songtrust, and then we register them globally with all the PRS and MCPS equivalents around the world, which kind of answers the last question as well, because yeah, I mean, mechanical royalties are generated every time your music is streamed, as well as performance royalties. So you want to make sure you collect mechanical royalties. And again, there's dozens of different societies around the world that pay those through. So if you use a platform like Songtrust, we will register you with all of them. So you haven't got to think about making loads of different memberships and registrations each time.
If you are a new artist, that sort of platform, especially Songtrust, is the way to go, because there's a high chance you will not even be able to locate most of those organizations. And speaking frankly, some of them are questionable with payouts as well. So having a direct relationship with a third party is actually really helpful, I think.
Thank you.
And Sammy, there's a question for you come in again from an anonymous attendee. Where can we have access to these skip rates? I'm struggling. I don't know.
Depends on who your distributor is. And this is one of the things that I think as well, when people aren't considering when they're releasing, actually you want to go with a distributor who has a really robust data set. Like there's some out there that boast that they do, and actually it's a bit of smoke and mirrors when you have a look, and I'm not going to name them because I'll get a million horrible emails. But as an artist or a manager, if you're self-releasing, I would take the time to look at what their backends look like and see what data that you actually get, because some of it will be locked to distributor level and you may not be, or label level, and you may not be able to access it. And some of it you'll be able to see in the portal on the back side of that. And some of the streaming services obviously offer a lot of direct analytics just within their artist platforms. But I would always be looking for a distributor that has a really robust data set that you can actually make make a decision off the back of, that also does include things like skip rates and includes things like where that play is coming from. And depending where it comes from as well, like if, free tier or premium tier, you get paid, in different ways depending on the tier. So, well, yes and no, depending on market share. It's so complicated. But I would always look for that. And I think it's worth testing out a few distributors actually and saying, can I have a look at what, if I sign in with you, can I have a look at what that looks like? Some of the videos are online, but it's worth spending the time.
Thank you. And I've got another question for you, Sammy. Sorry. What agency is responsible for collecting sync royalties? If you upload a lyric video to your own YouTube channel, will you get sync royalties from it? Is that only if you have ads in the video?
Jesus Christ. Right. Hang on. What? I can help with that a bit as well. So yeah, you'll get royalties from YouTube as long as the video is monetized. So there have to be ads placed on it. And then, if you wrote the song on the publishing side, then if the video is monetized, then you will see royalties.
Definitely. And as an emerging independent artist, what is the best way to reach out and engage publishing companies, as many of them list that they will not accept unsolicited music? That's from Millie Blooms.
Yeah, publishing's an interesting world because, publishing companies are not always making that many signings, and there's a lot of A&R that goes into who they decide to work with, just like there is, with record labels and things. And, that's why a company like Songtrust exists, to enable, previously only writers who had a publishing deal could collect their global publishing royalties. But now, companies like Songtrust, and there are other publishing administrators as well, mean that you don't have to be lucky enough to be offered a deal. You can actually make sure that you get all of that money yourself through using a publishing administrator.
And also, if you are looking for a deal, just keep writing so many songs and put your songs out there on platforms. And because you don't have to be necessarily like an actual upfront artist, you might just want to be a writer. But how we got our deals as an emerging artist, was our publishing deals, was just literally writing songs and playing them to people, and then you get noticed. And just be around, just be out there.
Thank you. And yeah, we've run over time, so I'm just going to take one last question. Sorry, we couldn't get to answer every single one, but this is from Sarah, who says, I work for a clothing brand and I'm finding all this really relevant. I love Data2 and Pixels. Do you know any tools that give an overview of all social media accounts?
There's a few around, but I actually think, speaking honestly, is still best suited right now to, if you want the really granular level, it's on platform. You'll get a top line, but it's to do with data restriction. It's actually the same for streaming stuff. There's a certain level of public scrape data that you're able to access publicly, but it also means that anyone could necessarily access that. And then there's a granular level of data that would only be if you owned the right to that data, and sometimes locked to a distributor if it's a streaming service. So for now, there are tools available, but I would start by digging right in on your individual back end of the platforms, and then see if there's stuff, specifically stuff that you have to sign into. That's the thing. You will only get so much from public scrape. You really need to be able to be logged into your account in order to see a granular level of data that would mean something important.
Great, thank you. No, thank you so much, guys. I feel like it's been like super informative and a really helpful panel. I feel like we've covered lots, and definitely one thing to take away from it is this housekeeping of just making sure that you're registered for those basic essential income streams like the PRS, the PPL, looking, as Sammy said, onto your social media accounts and seeing if there's any ways that you can monetize on those with your YouTube partner programs, etc. And looking into diversifying how you would look to get your income streams as an artist, like look into your merch and looking into different ways that you can incorporate and work with branding deals and bring those into your social media accounts. So we covered loads and we're running out of time, so we're going to have to put a close to it, but I really appreciate all you ladies like giving us your time and joining us today. I don't know if anybody wanted to say any last words before we leave.
Just thank you, Nadia, for inviting us to take part and for taking your time to do these every week, because you know, a lot of prep goes into them and they're so useful for everyone. I've learned a lot today, so thank you, Nadia. That's been brilliant.
We've learned a lot today as well. I love it.
Yeah, amazing.
Likewise, thank you. And these are helpful. I mean, I know there's people watching, but now is a really great time also. If you're looking to get into the industry, there's a lot of this sort of stuff going on. And actually, when we're talking about, you know, live streams with artists, now is a really good time to look across stuff like this so that you can learn a bit more about the industry. Who knows what it looks like when this is over, though, ladies, you know, but at least you can figure out how it was working and see how it might work going forward.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I've just basically I've had nothing to do because everything just got cancelled of mine. So I've just been like, right, what can I do? And I've been like jumping onto this virtual world and doing these panels, and I'm finding it a really nice way to keep connected with everybody, and I'm learning so much. And I've felt like every time any of us like get together and share our experiences, share our knowledge, share our stories, like we can just like learn so much from it and like get each other's tips and expertise. So it's really helpful. So I really appreciate you all joining me today, and thanks to everyone that joined in on the panel. I do record the panels and I will send out a link so you can watch them all back. So I'll make sure that everybody gets that, and I'll send the business resources link out as well so that you can get that. Thank you, everybody. Bye bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye everyone.
Bye.